Sex trafficking happens right here in our own backyard.
We find out that there are an estimate of 100,000 domestic minors in our own country, our own citizens, that are being trafficked into the sex trade.
I mean, they're your neighbors, they're your daughters, your sisters.
And we know one more thing.
They didn't just wake up one day and say, I want to be a prostitute.
So who are these modern slaves and how'd they get trapped in the sex trade? Well, it starts young.
The kids are anywhere from 12 to 17 years old.
The average age of entry, 14, according to UT's Dr. Celia Williamson, who chaired an Ohio Attorney General's commission on the subject.
You know, it cuts across socioeconomic lines, it cuts across race, gender. You know, teenage boys are trafficked into the sex trade.
At 15 years old, I turned my first trick. At 15, it was simple, it was easy.
Easier for Leanne Campbell to face than the broken home, the sexual abuse that made her such a vulnerable teenage girl, and that's a key.
The common denominator among these kids who get trafficked is their vulnerability.
Broken families and abuse are markers, so are drug use, running away, being in child protective services. That's not my kid, you say. But are you parents, both of whom work all the time? Your attention-starved daughter or son is vulnerable.
Or it could be 3 kids living in a 2-parent middle-class home, and that one kid needed more time, love, and attention, and the parent didn't recognize it, and that kid is vulnerable.
They're vulnerable targets now inside. Traffickers use force, fraud, or coercion to reel them in.
And so this actually means that someone has either been tricked in some kind of way, and many times with children, they can be easily manipulated, easily tricked, and coerced.
Gary Haugen heads the International Justice Mission in Washington, D.C. From 18 worldwide offices, IJM works to penetrate human trafficking networks worldwide.
Others are very forcibly and violently abused, so it's a range of coercion and manipulation that you'll find in trafficking.
You also need to know the trafficker is not some seedy lowlife looking for your kid in a dark corner. The first contact is much more likely at a mall, an arcade, a pizza joint.
They approach you at places where parents will drop you off and feel you're safe, and they will have another 14-year-old or a 16-year-old boy or an adult woman recruit you. It's not a big scary guy.
Fear and force and breaking down a victim's psyche keep them under the trafficker's control.
I will psychologically control you so much that before you go to the bathroom, you will ask me how many squares of toilet paper to tear off.
Once you're broken, your brain stops.
Toledo recently ranked 4th in the country behind only Miami, Portland, and Las Vegas in terms of arrests, investigations, and rescue of young American sex trafficking victims. The FBI leads the Northwest Ohio Innocence Lost Task Force, attacking this organized crime with a victim-based approach.
Recognizing that a lot of the people involved in this type of activities, particularly the juveniles, they're victims, and we treat them as victims.
The feds now coordinate with law enforcers from around Northwest Ohio, the juvenile courts and social service agencies to identify potential victims and traffickers. Agent Dave Dustin says the task force approach is making great strides. In fact, the Toledo model is being copied around the country.
Statistically, we rank in one of the higher rankings across the country for the identification and recovery of victims.
It's sort of like a double-edged sword because we're looking for it, we're finding it, and we're responding, and so then we sort of get a bad reputation.
Leanne Campbell spent 16 years in the sex trade. Her drug abuse became an addiction, crack controlling her actions, until she called her mom, who was now in control of Lee's 5 kids.
And I called her, I said, I got a gun, I'm coming to kill you and those 5 kids. This will end my problems. If I kill you and the kids, then I can kill myself and I don't have no problems.
But Mom called the cops. Leanne went to jail. She was given a Bible, later visited Cedar Creek Church. She says God changed her, and she now works trying to rescue others caught in modern slavery at Toledo's Second Chance, founded by Celia Williamson. For her part, the UT Associate Professor urges parents to educate themselves and their kids to get suspicious.
The way we've learned as youth to be protective of ourselves while we're on the internet is the same thing we have to do when we're at the mall, or when we're at the corner store, or when we're over at friends' houses.
And maybe the best lesson is one we can learn from the former prostitute who's now sober and successfully reunited with her kids.
We should be down on our knees praying for those women and children stuck out there, drug addicted and or trafficked. We should be doing more than and not less than. Sometimes we gotta get our hands dirty.